listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
Yeah, so listen, I was thinking because, because you, well, hey there. Do you want to save about 30% of your communication time with pretty much everyone? Do you want to avoid confusion and conflicts by doing sort of the opposite what you would think that you would need to do? If you answered no, then I don't know who you are anymore. No, just kidding. I know exactly who you are. So let me provide a rule and a method to you and immediately break it as a way of explaining it. When my kids were younger, I used to say, "You're giving me too much of a header in what you're saying." And they eventually understood that that was a very nerdy, geeky term for me, which let me back up that in devices, in connecting to each other, they send a header that says, "Hey, this is what I'm trying to send you. This is the data, da-da-da-da-da." So the thing I'm about to send you is as follows. And then it sends the actual information. So, a header. Get it? Let me break that down further. When you listen to a podcast, or watch a video or a documentary, or even something that is fiction, more often than not, in fact, nauseatingly more often than not, there's a header on it. And this header gets in the way of what you're trying to read or listen to sometimes. For example, a podcast or video will say, "Did you know that this thing is possible?" And then they'll back up and they'll explain something to you that's very mundane, like something like let's discuss the history of the broom. And you're like, I don't care. I don't care about the history of the broom. You were telling me about this new kind of vacuum cleaner. Just tell me about how the suction works without moving parts or something like that, right? You see that all the time. Imagine how much time you would save if they just get to the freaking point. In fact, I've been noticing lately, there are some instructional videos out there on YouTube in which people just go, "Okay, so here's how this works." And you go, "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much." So the same thing works for communication. So first of all, let's back up. If you have a blog, if you have a podcast, you have a show, or you have some kind of external communication with people, try to drop that. Try to minimize that as much as possible, because you'll be surprised that your audience will actually appreciate that. It's what I do. I typically just jump right into things. And with me limiting myself to about 10 minutes, I don't really give myself a lot of time to create this header. Now, you could say that this first 3 minutes of this podcast, ooh, I hit that right on the dot again. Boom. You could say that those first 3 minutes were sort of a header, but they're actually explaining the concept directly. So there you go. So let me move on to my promise about cutting down communication time and possible frustration. And when I say you, I mean us, we, everyone. Our normal gut reaction is to think, "I really want to be understood," right? And there are some phrases out there that say, if you try to understand others, you'll be understood. Da, da, da. And there's my mantra, which I repeat constantly, which makes it a mantra: seek first to understand. It's what I always try to do. And the nice thing about seeking first to understand is it just generates some questions and things. So it's not a header. But I also want to be understood. And I have found in the past, before I really understood this, that when you're trying to explain what you're trying to explain, people go, "Wait, what?" Because when you get someone's attention, when you say, "Excuse me, I have a question," and then you start to describe something else, and you didn't actually ask them a question yet, their eyes glaze over, because that part of their memory and that reasoning ability only has so much pressure it can take. It can only take so much information where it puts it in the storage area and goes, okay, I'm listening, okay. Where's the question part? I guess I'm keeping this in mind, okay. I'm keeping this in mind, but and then they lose interest. Or by the time you explain the thing to them or ask them the question, they'll be so confused by the other thing, they'll be a little bit annoyed with you, won't they? They'll be a little bit annoyed that you wasted their time asking this other thing, and their reaction to you may not be, let's say, optimal. Let me give you a couple examples, but before I do that, let me explain to you why we do that. We do that, again, first of all, to be understood. We do that to soften the blow when we're asking for something. We do that because we may feel guilty about what we're asking. We may feel intimidated by the other person. And let me tell you, intimidation comes in all sorts of forms. There are guys who go to the gym who are intimidated by women in skimpy outfits. It's not because they can outlift them. It's because their bodies are far more long than these guys are, and they're struggling to lose weight. And that's intimidating. So intimidation comes in all sorts of forms. There's a structural intimidation. There's a status intimidation. So you can be intimidated by someone because they're higher up in status than you, whether they're your boss or whether they're just somebody that you think is better dressed than you, is in a position to say no and ruin your life. Even somebody who is the housekeeping at a hotel might intimidate you in such a way that you are afraid to ask them certain things. No offense to housekeeping people. So we have a lot of emotional pressure for us to do this sort of thing. If our upbringing was such that was the situation, yeah, you couldn't really talk to dad. His heart was in the right place, but you couldn't ever ask him a question. Let me put the asterisk on there that, has there ever been a time where someone said, but they meant well, and it really went well? Typically no, right? So think about that. Let's do a pause right now, because I do compress so much in here. Let's do a pause right now. Pause and think about what I just said about you having headers in your life and you dealing with people in such a way that you can't just talk to them directly, and what were you feeling at the time? And see you later. And we're back. Thank you. If you did pause, I just love that you do that with me. If you didn't pause, well, whatever. You never mind. So, moving on. Here are the examples of how people can use a header which just mucks everything up. So someone wants to switch vacation days with someone. So rather than just saying, hey, Jenny, I saw that you were going to take the vacation day on Friday, but then didn't anymore. So I'm going to switch with you. Is that okay? As opposed to, hey, Jenny, I saw that you didn't take the vacation day on Friday, and I know you like taking a vacation. It's not up to me really to switch with you, but I guess I'm not sure if you still have that day, or you see how that'd be really annoying, and she'd be like, oh, it's none of your business. Oh, what? So that's one of the examples. If you are on a date with someone and it's only your second or third date, let's say, asking some big elaborate question about what they like, what they don't like, and so on and so forth is sucks all the joy out of just saying, I'm gonna take us here. I'm gonna do this. And contrary to what you may read, there's a lot of people out there who still like traditional gender roles. They still traditionally like the gentleman to say, we're gonna do this. What do you think? I have it all arranged. I mean, my experience in that area has been extremely positive, to the point where I've actually met women who've said, I'd rather you just picked, okay? Because I don't know, whatever. And so it's actually kind of nice to do that rather than, it seems like you like this sort of thing. We could do this, but we could do that. But I don't know, I don't want to be too forward because of this and this and this. And as I've said before, that emotional pressure and baggage can actually make it sound like you're just not that confident. And it may not have anything to do with confidence. It may have to do with you just trying to suss out, trying to figure out what the options are. I like to believe that people are, inherently good, and that's what typically their intentions are, and that people just get confused, or there's all this other stuff that comes into play. And I think this is one of those things that comes into play in which people seem like they're being selfish or they're being something negative, but in fact, they're just trying to do the right thing. They're just trying to make a good decision and trying to get a little bit of a consensus with the other person. But the problem is, like I said, when you're constantly creating this consensus with other people, it can become very taxing. And this taxing feeling can make them push back and push away on you, whether it's in business or it's in a personal relationship. Like, what do you want now? Okay, I'm listening. Like, the actual listening doesn't ever occur because it's the pre-listening of the thing that you're pre-telling them. Let me give you an example of how that really helped me. So I'm going to be going to a concert, and I'm extremely excited to meet the main event, because this is somebody who really inspired a large portion of the writing that I had in my latest book. And maybe inspired isn't exactly the correct term. It's somebody who provided in my brain the background music from one of my main characters. It was just such a beautiful thing. I wanted to meet the person. I wanted to not only talk about them in the book. I mentioned them in the dedication, their music at least. I didn't go on and on. I just basically had their name and what they did. And I thought, well, this isn't enough. I need to go to the concert. So then I found the concert. They were finally in the North American hemisphere. And I thought, okay, I'm going to the concert. And I scheduled the concert. And I thought, no, I really need to meet them. Well, they just had these incredibly expensive meet and greets. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to participate. It's just not something that I could budget to go to this extremely expensive meet and greet. So it never listed that there was a meet and greet for this particular concert. So I found their managers in Italy, and I wrote to them. And I wrote literally 2 sentences. I had a lot to write. I had a lot to explain. But I just asked the question. I said, I wrote this book. I appreciate what he did because it provided the soundtrack, and I'd love to give him a signed copy to thank him. It was less than 24 hours later, I got an email back that said, we have 2 tickets for backstage passes for you for the concert in your name. and I freaked out when I saw that. I was just amazed. And then because of the lockdown, the concert was canceled. But now the concert is going to occur this year. So I'm crossing my fingers that it will occur. But this is an example of getting rid of the header, because they may have started to read it and go, oh, this is just fan mail. They literally may have just deleted the message and said, oh, that's really sweet, or forwarded me to some other random email versus saying, oh, this guy asked a direct question. So that is a real life example of just dropping the header and just communicating directly. I hope you found this useful. And I want to know if you drop the headers with anyone in your life, in your circles, and what happens. I'd love to hear about it. I always love the feedback. So please give me some feedback. There's an email address associated with this. You can go to my Facebook page as well and post something there. You can even hit me up with messaging there too. But I'd prefer it was public, because then everyone else can benefit from that, versus me again and again in these podcasts saying, oh yeah, someone wrote to me and said this, someone wrote to me and said that. And you're like, uh-huh. So I'd much prefer it was public. Unless it's really negative, then yeah, let's make that private. No. So thank you again. And I really look forward to you telling me that you dropped the header, at least tried it, and saw that it either, reduced some communication and reduced some stress and so forth. You may find that there's a person in your life that you think is really difficult to communicate with. And then you drop the header with them, and then you're like, well, they're like everyone else. And it's because you were so afraid to communicate with them that you constantly threw this big header on them every time you talk to them. And they're like, oh my God, this person really doesn't like me. Or, oh my God, this lack of confidence is really annoying about this person. It may even help your dating. So please give me some feedback. And I want to give a shout out to Japan. According to my chart software, I was rising on the charts there in mental health. So hi, Japan. And everyone else, including Japan, take care. Hey there, thanks for listening. I always appreciate your feedback. I really, really do. Wanted to let you know that the Sword and the Sunflower audiobook won as Best New Author for 2020. My podcast is available wherever you consume podcasts, and my books are available on Amazon. Take care.